Hey guys, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Not too
What's up,
bad.
man?
We have Kobus and Bibake. Let's act casual as if we have not had a quick catch-up call before this. But yeah,
Acting.
thank you guys for doing this, man. I mean, it's something that I talked to Bibake about, a while back. And Kobus, thank you for joining at last minute. I sent Kobus the message today morning if he could like join us, and then you know,
Was I not enough, man? You needed some backup plan?
needed a little more personality in the podcast.
Thanks, man.
Jeez, man.
What a nice compliment.
No,
I'm a podcast virgin, so this is my first one. So I'm
Same.
looking forward to it.
yeah, it's gonna be fun. No, also the other idea of getting Kobus on board is we've already done this a few times. If you think about it, right? We've done this a few times at Bibake's place, and then when we've gone out to catch a coffee at Religion or a beer, we've
Like a
always had
conversation,
like
you mean?
yeah, we've always had a good conversation. And I thought, why not? Start with three of us, and then if
Yeah.
Kobus is boring us, we'll kick him out, and
It's
we can talk
it's
about
it's a shame that we keep those conversations to ourselves. The world needs to hear them.
the five people who probably click on this needs to hear them.
Yeah, man.
People can benefit from us. You're right. Like,
You're
on a
welcome,
massive
world.
scale.
You're welcome.
Okay, but okay, since we're talking about that, basic motivation to probably do this podcast, I think one of them is it's been a great year and a half. I thought we've been it together, so it'd be a great idea for us to probably share what our thoughts were on it, and most importantly, hopefully, if there's like maybe one or two people who listen to this, if one of them is considering an MBA, this will probably give them a little more idea of what to expect.
Hey, man, don't count yourself short, man. You might have millions of subscribers soon.
Hey, you never know. I might just go viral.
Yeah, people are gonna go back and listen to your earlier episodes, and they're gonna pick up this gem.
Yeah. Why not? The first one, actually, not the first. Yeah, okay, but cool. So awesome. Yeah. So let's start with like introductions. So Bibek, why don't you get us going, man?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, I did the year and a half with you, so I did a dual degree at IE. But leading into that, I kind of got a pretty diverse background. I did my undergrad in communications, was always an athlete, different sports. Ended up sticking with football, so I played that in college alongside my degree, and then I ended up playing pro for a little bit there in the CFL. An injury caused that to kind of come to an end fairly quickly. But it was actually a bit of a blessing in disguise. I bounced around a little bit, did some forest firefighting, which was an interesting experience. It was a nice segue out of football from taking the team aspect from sports and applying it in a more of a professional setting. But then I decided to transition from that. I went to join the public transit agency here in Vancouver. They were growing quite rapidly. Initially joined them on the front lines, so not really using my communications degree, but that was a good experience that eventually led me to kind of enter a position in a corporate communications role. So that was good. Really enjoyed that. I learned a lot about communications and kind of how to manage a reputation for an organization. But I felt like it was a little bit too specialized for me. I wanted to explore a little bit more, so I decided to do an MBA. Explored a little bit, different options, and IE stood out to me. With the international experience being in Madrid, I felt like someone that's spent the majority of his life in North America, Vancouver especially, that it would be good for me to get out and kind of broaden my perspective a bit. So I decided to pull the trigger on that. And initially I was in a second degree. It was customer experience, which was along the lines of what I had, the experience I had at the public transit agency. But in speaking to some people and realizing that, that was an area that I had some experience, that I'd be better off, broadening into the tech space a little bit more. That was something that was new to me. And I figured it'd make me more well-rounded. So I decided to do the Masters in Big Data with you. So just finish up with that. And now I'm back home in Vancouver and waiting for my job to start in January.
Perfect. Thanks. Just want to point out that you've probably covered my first 4 questions in your introduction alone. But
all right, you better dig deep then. Hopefully you have a long list of questions.
No, we'll dig deep. And we should have probably made you go second because you've set the bar a little too high with your whole professional athlete and then firefighting experience.
Yeah,
Kobus,
I
Yeah,
guess
you
man.
have anything you want to top that with your?
Yeah,
with your
I
introduction?
just wanted to mention, thanks a lot for letting me go second, man. It's I'm gonna have to make up shit just to look cool. But no, yeah, it's thank you, Bake, for that as well. But no, yeah, it's very cool to be part of my first podcast. As a bit of an introduction, yeah, I'm from South Africa, married, 2 boys, third one on the way. I worked in the same industry, which is mining and construction, one could say, for 10 years with the same company, and thought I needed a bit of a break, almost to a certain degree. That's the one reason I did it, or considered the MBA. The second one is I wanted to have a bit of insurance on the CV, and the third one is yeah, just for life experience. So lead up was 10 years, same company, great experience, all-round experience. I think that set me up also properly to be a part of the MBA and actually contribute in a unique way. And also did research from around the world at 1 or 2 criteria, and I ticked all the boxes. And yeah, man, very cool year. I'm sure that you'll get into some detail with the questions, but yeah, I think that's about it from my side. Accounting as a background, never played professional sports, never sorted out my communication skills. You know, totally, it's still something I'm working on.
Never
Looking
fought
up to
any
the bank.
fires.
Never fought any fires, saved lives, saved innocent animals. So no, man, but you know, trying to do my thing, keep on keeping on.
Thanks, man, Kobus. That sounds great. Yeah. So coming back to me, yeah. So I'm Gautam, and I grew up in Dubai because that's the closest city that Indians can migrate to, and spent quite a few years there before coming back to India to do my undergrad in computer engineering. I stuck around for a corporate job, which I didn't really enjoy before I jumped into startups. I had a blast for a couple of years, but I think I reached a point where I really didn't know what I was doing, and I probably didn't give it as much. I didn't give the whole MBA thing as much thought as you guys did. I didn't have a pros and cons list, but I knew I wanted to get out and do definitely fill in some of the gaps that I knew I had, and IE was the university that I got into first, and I didn't want to wait for anything else. So yeah, I picked IE. And yeah, it's been a tremendous year and a half. I did the dual degree as well with Bibake in big data. Actually, unlike Bibake, I considered switching over from big data to something like market research, but thankfully logic prevailed, and I stuck with big data. And I think it's worked out. It's worked out really well. But yeah, that's great. Thanks for your introductions. Very quickly, so what were your expectations coming in? Before you actually got here and you got a full taste of how much did you know about IE and the experience here before you actually got here? Whoever wants to go first.
Kobus, you want to take this one first?
Yeah, man. Let me take this one first. So I actually had a friend that went to IE 2000 and I think it was 18 or 17.
Uh-huh.
So I spoke to him a lot. Got a good feeling about what happens at IE, what Madrid is like. And yeah, I had 1 or 2 meetings with him, not on a massive scale, but it's also not my style to research something in insane detail. Before I jump into it, I ticked all the big boxes, and I thought, let's park the small, interesting stuff for when we arrive there. So that's basically what I did. I think
what were
overall,
your big boxes?
Yeah, big boxes start in January 2019, and not September, which is the date that a lot of other universities start at. Had to be top 10 in some rankings, and
Well said.
way back then. Yeah, man, definitely international university, because I had the option of doing my MBA in South Africa, but part of the reason why one of my big boxes was it's almost, I saw it as insurance on my CV to a certain degree, because South Africa is volatile-ish and things can go south should 1 or 2 things happen, and then I have could get some, or could get a good job internationally, or should get a good job internationally with the MBA from IE. what was the other one? Yeah, family-friendly city was a big thing for me. Yeah, weather should be relatively good throughout the year. Yeah, those are probably my biggest boxes that I wanted to tick.
Nice.
So yeah, I think in terms of what I expected and what happened, it was different. It's difficult to expect exactly what happens at, you know, in Spain, in Madrid, at IE. Even if you talk to someone that went through that experience, it's difficult to have exactly or understand exactly what they went through and all the, let's say, benefits that they got out of it. So the expectation was different, but in my case, it exceeded my expectations. So I'm very positive thing from me for sure.
Before we move on to Bibake, I just want to quickly tell you why I framed this question, because when I picked an MBA, my initial expectation for IE Business School as well was I expected a really professional environment. Not to say that I'm unhappy with the more of the fun environment that IE provides, but I didn't expect it to be as casual as it was. But it sort of warmed up to me, and but yeah, that initial expectation was any networking event itself would mean that we'd be standing around wearing suits and holding fancy wine glasses and discussing, I don't know, the latest geopolitical situation somewhere. But but I was very, very, very naive coming in about what to expect or what I could get away from. From this.
I think from my side, I want to support that, man. I thought it would be much more professional. I'm not saying that in a negative way. Also, looking back on it, it was more like a startup, I think, environment to a certain degree, like from start to finish, and a bit more casual, informal. But like anything in life, it's what you make of it. I think a lot of people then got sidelined and only drank like Marco.
No name and shame, bro.
No, but he went through it, and that was his style. He still, I think, got a lot out of it. It's not shaming at all. That's actually just it was his style.
No. I mean, he had a good time. So yeah.
Yeah, but I agree with you 100%. I think in terms of my expectation with how professional or how strict or how structured it would be, it was different there as well. Yeah,
it was almost a good thing. I mean, that it was as casual as it was, because I mean, not that I've been to other MBA programs other than for like recruiting trips, but I think that the typical cliche of an MBA coming out is this overly formal person that's a little bit kind of uptight, and I think why a lot of companies value IE grads is that we have kind of the knowledge that comes along with an MBA, but without the uptightness. And that's not to kind of talk down other MBA programs. I'd imagine that that they're finding ways to prevent that from happening. But I did find that IE grads are very down to earth, very chill, and I think that's a product of being in Madrid and the culture there and Spanish culture in general. But I might as well kind of carry on and answer your question. So I think you were saying why did I choose it and what were my expectations, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of choosing it, it was actually not on my radar until like a month before I applied, which was like a month and a half, 2 months before I was set to start. So I decided to do an MBA, I think early to mid 2018. And I started off by doing my GMAT. Initially, I was looking at local schools in BC, and there are some good schools there. But I wrote the GMAT and kind of did a little bit more exploration. And I discovered that there are other options available to me. So looking mostly at North American schools, Ivy and Rotman in Canada are kind of the top tier, and then a few schools in the US piqued my interest. But then I had a friend that did his master's in finance at IE, and I gave him a call. He played football with me at SFU. So he's from Vancouver as well, and he decided to go to IE. And so he put me in touch with a recruiter. I met with her. She was awesome. She told me about it and kind of presented that entrepreneurial side of it and how it's quite a bit different than most other MBA programs, especially ones in North America and the ones that I was looking at. And so that piqued my interest. And then the fact that they had the dual degree in 18 months, most MBA programs are 2 years. And so for me to get 2 masters in a year and a half, I thought that was quite valuable. The MBA for me was I think it's become somewhat of a commodity. So it on its own, I can see the value in it for a lot of people, but for me, I wanted something additional. I mean, someone like Kobus who has work experience for a decade, that that's quite valuable. For me, I was still fairly new in my career. I spent a lot of time playing football, so I didn't have that same sort of kind of experience behind me from professional like work experience context. And so that second degree I thought would help differentiate me. Um, and then in terms of expectations, I mean, I didn't know what to expect. I hadn't been to Europe since I was 2 years old, so you have a very vague sense of what Europe is, and it's not very detailed. And so I came in with no expectations, really, to be honest. Just hungry to learn, just meet new people, and kind of expand my knowledge base, I guess you can say. And so that was it for me. And so everything else was a nice to have on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great. I mean, coming from a city like Vancouver, which is a lot younger, a lot newer than a city like Madrid, it was quite a stark contrast in a good way. So I felt like it was a good experience in that sense. And then the school itself, I think the fact that it's so international. I mean, a lot of North American schools, they have their diversity numbers, but like say if I was born in another country but I grew up in Canada, but I had a passport from another country, I would count as an international student, right? Just to kind of boost the diversity numbers. But at IE, like you got guys from South Africa that are born and raised there. You guys got guys from Dubai, from Japan, from Latin America, from everywhere, right? Like these are people that are actually from there, living there, and I thought that was really cool. And although my plan was always to go back to come back to Canada.
You warmed up to the idea of living in Europe, right? Since
yeah,
then.
I mean, I'm still open to it, but it still makes most sense for me to come back to Canada. I mean, family, friends, although I've got friends now all over the world, but having family close by when I start my own family, I think is important. And so it remains my long-term plan. So if you think about it, it's not necessarily logical. Most people say that you should do your MBA where you plan to work, which makes sense. I mean, you build your network. Like had I gone to a school near Toronto, my whole network would have been in Toronto, and that's great from a professional context.
Mm-hmm.
But I think from a lifestyle and what's valuable long term, like having friends around the globe, yes, I might not be able to lean on them from a professional standpoint, but that's not as important, right? Like the fact that I can go to South Africa and have friends there, and go to Japan, go to any part of Europe. I think that's a lot more valuable. So yeah, I know I took away a lot from it, and it exceeded my expectations, which I mean were fairly minimal to start with.
So both of you mentioned something that probably we can dig a little deeper into. In terms of like IE Business School being when we were all considering it and coming in, had good ratings and generally was in a really good place, but there was that whole incident that happened in our first semester, which you both know what I'm alluding to, the drop in the ratings in Financial Times. And you remember the whole hue and cry that there was just generally about both the intakes that were there at that time, September and Jan. But personally, I don't think it was that big a deal, because I could see from a certain perspective of someone coming in with that solely in mind, that they wanted like a top 10 business school on their resume. But I didn't really think that was, even the rating per se didn't really matter to me as much. I think I learned really quickly coming in within the first month or two, I'm going to have to pretty much make my own way. So since you guys did give that some thought, in terms of like the rating of the school itself, what do you think? Or how was that, the drop itself? Did it change your perspective, or did you make you want to perhaps rethink?
I mean, at that point, there's no rethinking, right? There's no point in
probably rethink is probably not the right word, but just
But a lot of people did feel that, right? They did have a sense of regret. So for me, I mean, the rating was important in initially filtering down schools, just because there's so many different options out there that you got to use some sort of criteria, and an external ranking is just a good place to start. In terms of narrowing down schools. So that was important for me to kind of have IE on my list in the first place. But I think the rankings, or them dropping in the rankings during our program, I didn't pay much attention to it because, I mean, one thing is all it's going to do is potentially give me a sense of regret, which isn't very useful. There's nothing I can do about it. So, the decision's already been made. So any change in the rankings, like if it's something that I can influence, I'll work to make it better. But if it's something beyond my control, there's no real point in thinking about it. But in terms of job prospects, right, which I think people were concerned about, I think if you're relying on the school's rankings to help you get a job,
I think you already made a mistake there.
I think
that's not the right approach.
From in my experience, for recruiters, it's all about relationships, right? One-on-one relationships, reaching out to recruiters or people that you know. And IE has plenty of alumni in some good companies, right? So that's not going anywhere. So if you reach out to them and you seek their help and you're professional and you're sociable and all that, then you shouldn't have any trouble getting jobs. If you're relying on the ranking, putting it on your CV and hoping that you get just a ton of offers, I don't think that ever works. Even if IU's ranked quite high, I don't think that approach would have worked. So I think the consequences of it that people were concerned about shouldn't have been. I think the motivations that lead to those concerns aren't the right motivations in the first place, if that makes sense. And then also, I mean, it's not like IE dropped in every ranking, right? They dropped in Financial Times, and there were some specific circumstances that led to that, but it's still ranked quite well, and it's still
they did okay otherwise. Yeah,
it's still pretty widely recognized. So it's not like it fell off the face of the earth.
What do you think, Kobus?
Yeah, man. People like to complain, so they most definitely made a massive thing out of something that wasn't so.
And you were class rep, right? You were in the.
I was in the mix of it.
Yeah,
I was in the mix. So, no, but it was interesting, man. It's I think we spoke about diversity, which is the topic, just before the rankings, and for me, there's a link between the two. Just as diverse as the nationalities and the different people were, the reaction on the drop in the rankings was exactly as diverse as well. I 100% agree with Bibake. You made your decision. You can't rely on anybody else to get you a job. So make the most of it. And as I said, like within anything in life, you have to make it. It is what you make of it. And not everybody that was there, I think, had that specific mindset. It was there were people that were crying a lot. And I think they are also the people that maybe are struggling to find their feet afterwards, because it's a specific mindset, man. But yeah, I think the drop in rankings also triggered something in IE for me, or that's what I think at least. It felt as though they almost awoke from a bit of a sleep, a nice nap, and then they started doing a lot of interesting things, and I think that we've gone up in a few rankings, if I checked it out accurately this year. So there's a definite focus on it, and there's improvements, and it sharpened them on a lot of issues. So it was a good thing. I think it's a good thing. And let's say you get your MBA in 2020, you can't expect the university to have the exact same ranking for 40 years. So it's going to evolve and it's going to move around, and you have to be part of the community and support it as best you can, I think. Just like with the introduction, but basically said everything exactly as he should have. I agree with his views on it perfectly.
Hey, but before we move on, I have like a very Kobus specific question here, man. You actually came and moved completely with your entire family, right? Would you, like, going back, would you have probably changed that, decide to do it solo, and then or would you still have made that decision to have your family with you when you were here?
No, I think I wouldn't have changed anything. I think it was a good move. It's like you are removed from your environment where you feel more or less comfortable, and where you've got a lot of support, and you put in an environment where you have zero support, and you have to figure out everything as a team. And I think that helped a lot. It strengthens relationships. It forces you to sort some interesting things out, and I think it changes you to be a bit more selfless, because I think if you, like I said, if you're in an environment where you have a lot of support, it's different. You can organize one or two things to always get your way, to a certain degree. But no, the move was great for us as a family as well. And now we've got great stories, man. It's not everything was perfect.
But you've got good stories. Yeah,
it never is. We've got good stories. We had a great trip with a camper van, which I think we'll never forget. I think my little boy, although he's only 6 now, he still talks about it a lot, and he still refers back to Spain a lot. The smaller criminal, which is 2 years old now, he can't remember that much. He just keeps on reminding us that he fell somewhere in Spain. But he fell a lot, so we don't know which one he's referring to. But yeah, man, wouldn't change a thing. I think so for 9 months we were together there as a family, and then for 3 months I was there alone. So it was like a nice mix, I think, as well.
And like Spain was a huge factor as well, right? The fact that we were not in a predominantly English-speaking country, I think that also is an added level of complexity that you have to, or an added out of comfort zone that you have to deal with, right?
Si, senor.
But what do you guys think? I mean, do you think you would have done better, or your prospects as a candidate would have been better if you had pursued this in, say, Bibake, you had pursued this in Canada, same university, same kind of rankings, versus in a place where the language is a huge barrier?
Well, I mean, the language was a massive barrier, because at IE, everyone speaks English, and then around IE, it's a bit of an English bubble.
At a professional level, like if you have to look for a job.
Right, yeah. No, so that definitely, the job hunt process was definitely a little bit more complex and convoluted than it would have been had I gone to a school in North America, in Toronto. So one of the schools that I was looking at, Ivy, it's close to Toronto. They're like the consulting school, and consulting is what I was targeting.
Which one was that?
Ivy. So it's Western Ontario. The business school is named Ivy. So that would have made the most sense, right? Just on paper, because they're the consulting school. So all the consultancies in Toronto recruit directly from there. But for me, I kind of enjoy challenging myself and making things a little harder on myself. I mean, the conventional wisdom is, to go to school where you want to work. But I figured if I can make the transition back, then all the other stuff will have been worth it. And I kind of trusted myself to be able to make the transition back, and recognizing it would be harder than it would have been had I just gone to Ivy. Like I appreciate that challenge. And I mean, I managed to land a good job, right? One that I actually would have wanted to land had I even gone to Ivy. So I think in that sense, everyone has a different risk profile, though. I mean, for me, I like to take on as much risk as I can without breaking, because I find that it teaches me a lot more about myself. It forces me to have to grow and expand, and that comes from my sports background. Mm-hmm. That if you stick too much in the comfort zone, there's a direct consequence of it, right? When you on game day, the guy lined up across from you, if he's pushed himself a little harder than you have, then he's gonna be better than you. And so I think during my time as an athlete, I learned to become more tolerant of risk and appreciative of it. And so this was kind of a decision that coincided with that mindset. But yeah, the fact that Spain is so, they're not really like a lot of countries. I think Northern European countries, English you can get away with quite a bit, and they speak quite a bit of English. But Spain, and I think France as well, it's still predominantly Spanish.
It's more of a challenge.
Yeah, and so that was an interesting kind of experience
definitely. I think it adds a little more. At least you now lived in a country where you didn't speak the language and you had to figure your way out.
Yeah, and now I feel comfortable. I mean, I've learned enough Spanish now, and I've continued to learn since I've left there. That,
do you remember any Spanish, Kobus?
Si, senor. Yeah, I remember how to order a beer and a coffee, and my classic tostada con tomate in the mornings. But I have an interesting story. So we just arrived there, and I didn't expect Spain to be as Spanish, though. And I know it sounds weird now, but I expected them to be more English, because it's a
European country, yeah.
that's what the world is like if you stay in South Africa, from forever. But we arrived in Madrid. When was it? I think it was like the 2nd of December 2018, and we rented an Airbnb in Salamanca. So nice neighborhood, man, very cool. Arrived in the morning, struggled to get a taxi, struggled to get into the apartment, but let's say figured that out. Everybody was relatively English with that whole process. But then in the morning we wanted to order coffee, or just get a coffee at a coffee shop, like right downstairs, close to our apartment. Went down, tried to get their attention. Excuse me, sir, excuse me, miss, I want to order a coffee. And the moment she heard English, man, she just turned her back and sorted out everybody else. So that was like the first, my introduction into life in Madrid. But yeah, like I said, it's a lot more Spanish than I expected. But
or a lot less English than you expected.
Yeah, a lot less.
A lot less English than you expected.
But I kind of like that though, man.
Good, man. I also like it a lot.
Yeah, because the thing is, the things you take for granted, like ordering a coffee, right?
Which is so easy
anywhere else
back home, yeah.
Yeah, like everything becomes challenging, and I guess some people can grow frustrated from that. But I enjoyed that. I mean, being there for a year and a half, and things you've taken for granted, like even just having a conversation with a waiter or something, or like that was something that wasn't accessible to me for most of my time there. Even now, I mean, I don't know if I can have a full conversation, but at least I know enough now I can understand what someone's saying.
Get by a complete meal without having to
and that's
refer to Spanish.
That's a huge achievement from where I was when I first got there.
Yeah, I also find that with like solely Spanish speakers, if you meet them halfway, if you at least try, they're more willing to meet you halfway as well, and try to figure out like they're a lot friendlier if you're not aggressively English about it. But
no, I usually try and speak Spanish, and then at some point they'll get frustrated.
Exactly, right. and they automatically switch themselves. They're like, fuck it, I want to just get this done. And let's get
I know French too, and so some people speak French, which was helpful. I remember when I first got an Uber there, my driver didn't speak English, but he spoke French, and so
he spoke French. Whoa, okay.
Yeah, so that was helpful. But yeah, man, I mean, that whole experience, that adds a whole nother dimension. So again, kind of going back to what you want out of the MBA or just the, both masters. For me, the additional experience is beyond kind of the pure, professional development that you get from an MBA. I think is super worthwhile. And it's not something I'm going to throw on my CV. Actually, I guess I could put a language on my CV, but the kind of auxiliary experiences aren't ones that you can necessarily leverage to get a job, but they help you grow, man, and develop character.
No, for sure. And I think they sort of segue into professionally relevant experiences as well, right? The fact that you can get by in a scenario like that definitely helps.
One thought I just want to add to that, I mean, a lot of people are focused on developing specific skills that they think they need at a job, and they'll kind of look at job descriptions, things like that. But I think every experience you have is worthwhile, and it develops your character and personality. So for me, like the stuff I learned playing sports or firefighting or being in Spain and outside of the school, like everything beyond school, is stuff that's it's going to help me regardless of what I do, right?
Yeah.
And those are like the intangibles. It's not easy to quantify those or to say what those experiences are going to do for you, but they always find a way to kind of develop you and help you out in a lot of ways.
I think I agree with you 100% again. But what I want to say is I want to add to that and say I think you can't quantify it, but people pick that up though. When you have a conversation with someone and you've been through an MBA or a dual degree in Madrid, in Spain, and you traveled on your own for X amount of time, in some way it shines through. They can pick it up, and I think so. I do think it helps in interviews and after. I think it's massively beneficial. For me, the one thought that immediately comes up is like I can't remember exactly how I thought about things before MBA, which is I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing
because there's a lot of insanely great benefits that you get out of it, and like you say, it's intangible. You can't quantify it, but you do it does get picked up by people when you talk to them, for sure, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't fully understand before. People were like, oh, like one of my former employers, he's like, you know, that international experience can be so valuable. Like, we're really going to hire people that have international experience. And I tend to be someone that, you know, you can kind of, you don't necessarily have to go somewhere to learn something. Like, I tend to think or I tended to before, that you can kind of learn things in theory, and then if you're capable of you know, envisioning how that applies in practice, then you can learn the same lessons you would have learned had you gone to go experience something, just by understanding what that experience would give you. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, if someone can tell me, you know, what what living abroad, like what are the values of it and what you gain from it, I was kind of naive in thinking that if I just learn those lessons or hear of those lessons from people, and if I'm just you know, able to envision it clearly enough and be creative enough to understand what that looks like in practice, I can gain that same experience without actually going there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you muted naive. That's relatively accurate.
But I don't think that's possible.
Yeah,
it was kind of naive of me, right? There's just way too much.
I think there's a lot of nuances to the experience which you don't really you know, you don't get to
and this is kind of self-evident, right? And most people know this, but I guess it's really easy. It's like the arrogance of the intellect to like think that you can just learn things from, you know, sitting down and understanding what they, you know, what their implications are in theory, and then extrapolate out to in practice. But it's a very narrow view, and one that I've kind of learned to shed.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned one day to me, Bibake, there was some guy, I think it was Dostoevsky or Nietzsche or someone, that decided that he's not gonna, you know, I think he teaches himself everything, or what was that? I can't remember exactly. The guy. But
if you go on, maybe I'll remember what exactly it was.
Yeah, no, he just said he doesn't believe anybody else but himself. You know, he's going to figure everything out. And, you know, whatever he thinks, whatever.
Oh, I think it was Nietzsche. Yeah. So, I mean, not to say I'm very read, and you know, have read through a lot of Nietzsche stuff, but from what I understand, he was like reluctant to read other people's writing and stuff, and he relied on his own personal experience, which I actually still believe in that. Again, right? Like, me going there to experience it myself. If you just if you kind of refine the framework you use to take in information and make sense of the world, then I think that's enough to rely on to really understand the world. Because I find that when you get information secondhand, it's oftentimes very biased, and it's like, I heard this quote once: "The word is not the thing," meaning that when people put words to something, it's not the actual thing. It's they're trying to communicate it, and it's a crude form of what the actual thing that they're trying to describe is in their head, right? And so when people try and describe something to you, you get little bits and pieces of it, but it's only a fraction of what they've actually got in their mind. And so I like that resonated with me, hearing that about Nietzsche, that he relies on his experience.
That's an excellent point, but don't you think that this actually perfectly segues into my next question, which is, isn't that what the MBA was, though? Aren't you getting a person's impression of a subject? When we have a professor for strategy, you're getting that person's impression for what strategy should be. And you're assuming that this is giving you a general... so wait, let me ask you, like, in like, say, 5 years from now, do you think the MBA is still going to be relevant? Do you think it would still make sense for someone to go out there and invest this much money, this much time in a degree like the MBA?
It's hard to say. I mean, there are more and more alternatives that are coming up.
Because I'm of the personal opinion that this is, and I can sense Kobus disagreeing, but I'm of the personal opinion that
we're pot committed now. We gotta validate our decisions that we've already made. We can't go back now.
It's dying out because the generalization aspect of the MBA itself, I find increasingly irrelevant when it comes to what we need in the workforce per se. Because
Yes, man.
I don't know, because when I was thinking about it, right, when I go back to think about the 7 months and 8 months in MBA that Vivek and I spent, I'm going to definitely have to relearn a lot of the things that I went through. Like, I can't, off the top of my head, I don't probably remember all of managerial accounting. I need to probably brush up if I have to use those concepts again. But
Yeah, but the thing is, so I understand, let's say where you're coming from with this, but for me at least, whenever we talk about any of the topics that we cover in MBA, I'm a lot more comfortable though. So there's the terms that they throw at you. It's not like you're in the dark and you have no idea and you can't think about anything else but the different terms that people are using that you're not comfortable with. It's like you understand, and then you're more comfortable with that specific person in that conversation, and you can contribute on it various different levels from various different angles. That's for me at least. And let's take managerial accounting as an example. It's a because I'm in the line of work that I'm busy with now. I have to do. I've got like topics like pricing, etc., that I have to deal with. And what I sit down, I try and remember what we dealt with in class and what was taught to us, and then I go into the notes and I check that out. And then everything starts coming, back very quickly. Whereas if I started off from a zero or from a clean slate, it's a different ballgame, man.
But
so,
you just to quickly ask you something. You came from a financial background, right?
Yes. But not so much into costing. But yeah, I'm comfortable with financials, and that is my background. Yeah, but we can take any of the other topics. Let's say, what other topic?
Okay, let me throw one at you. MDM. Was it MDM? Yeah.
MDM. So yeah, MDM was an interesting one for me because I had zero experience in that. Like zero.
Well, for the listeners back home, managerial decision making is kind of like applying kind of analytics or of some sort to.
Yeah. So even the word linear regression, which I had zero knowledge of before, now I have some kind of an understanding of it. And it's a different game for me when someone talks about MDM type, let's say, topics in the workplace or not. I'm just a bit more comfortable, and I at least understand more or less what they're talking about, and I can go and research it, very easily if I want to. I don't use it in my line of work at the moment, but even MDM comes
good introduction. I think that class was a bit of an exception. I think it was the more kind of mathy class.
And apparently they dubbed it down. It was
well, that's the thing, right? Yeah, I think there was a lot more in that class before, and it's a fairly new, like MBA curriculums in general. Curriculi, is that the plural? Are pretty standard from school to school, and I think this whole new use of I don't know, machine learning techniques or whatever to make decisions is fairly new, and so it's not quite settled what the curriculum for that looks like. But I think for the other classes, like Kobus is saying, I think one thing is you get it taught to you in a structured way, and you could argue that all this information is available online. But what I find when I'm looking stuff up online, that it's really hard to get it structured in your head because there's just so many different ways of presenting the same thing. You don't know if you're getting the best practices. So to have academics explain it to you, people that are in this and they understand kind of the state of the art and how things are evolving and how to communicate it in a way that's structured, starting at a high level and then going down into the details and kind of creating a narrative around the subject. I think there's a lot of value in that.
Why not have a more specialized focus to it? Instead of we did an international MBA. Now, I think already IE is kind of taking it in the right direction with the whole tech MBA that they're introducing. But
you got to understand what an MBA is. An MBA is a generalist, or at least generalist MBAs are meant to give you skills that span across everything that's relevant to run a business, right?
Fair enough,
so
but I think that's
a bigger specialize.
Yeah, that's a bigger question than we're trying to answer, right? Do we need generalists?
Oh, is that your question?
I mean, yeah. Let's talk about that.
What do we need? I think so. Sorry, Kobus, go ahead.
For sure. No, I 100%. I think, let's say the first question you had was, is the MBA still relevant? In my opinion, 100% relevant. Whether the theory becomes a little bit less relevant over time, and they will have to update it, as the world changes. I think that'll happen. But everything else that goes with it, it forms a very unique and interesting package that serves you well in a lot of different circumstances. But also, do we need generalists? Fucking for sure. The thing is, if you have to run a business, it's from strategy to costing to everything else. You have to be comfortable with it. If you have to rely on someone else to, check and do and manage certain areas of your business that you don't have a solid handle on yourself, not the expert, you're comfortable a lot because it's just what describes it best for me. But you are comfortable in all of those subjects, or topics or areas of business. It's invaluable, man. And yeah, I think there's a place for it now and be for a long time. And I paid for my MBA. That's my story.
But in that from that point, like, how much experience do you think makes sense? At how much experience do you think it makes sense for you to do an MBA? Because we had people in the in IMBA who had like maybe a year or two, and then were doing the MBA program with us. At some point, you have to think you're going to need a little more experience on the field, right? Or at least a little more varied worldview before you jump into something like this.
Possibly depends, right? I mean, some people want to become entrepreneurs right off the bat. That's becoming more and more the case, right? And so I think MBA programs, a lot of them are the average age is getting lower and lower, right? Because there are opportunities that require a generalist understanding of things that aren't specific to people that have 10, 15 years of experience now, right? And I think so the MBA and the ages that are there and the types of people and their background and stuff reflects the opportunities in the market, right? So kind of going back to your initial question, is the MBA worth it? I think you have to understand, like, what is the MBA offering, right? So one thing is the theory, the academic side. So we kind of covered that already. And what it does is it gives you an introduction to all the relevant aspects of a business. And a good MBA program will not only give you an introduction, but it will try and get as deep as it can in each of those topics without neglecting any of them. And so that a lot of it's dependent on the student to actually dive into the material deeper than maybe what's covered in class, so that they can take away as much as they possibly can and make the most of it. So I think that is relevant, right? That's valuable, having that high level understanding of all the different topics. And like Kobus is saying, like, you don't want to have to rely on people you're managing it be a black box for you, right? You want to at least be somewhat versed in that topic. Yes, you might not be doing it like you're not going to be doing the day-to-day stuff, but you at least need to understand what your employees are doing so that you can manage effectively. So in that sense, it's valuable. But then the other thing that an MBA offers is a network, and kind of puts you in a place where you're surrounded by people that are kind of in a similar position as you, that they're looking to take the next step in their career. So there's a lot of value in that, talking to people, brainstorming
What do you guys think
ideas and stuff.
about what do you guys think about the network that so in general, when people talk about MBA, and a lot of folks that I talk to as well, when they talked about why they came to do the MBA, for them it was the network and building, the networking and all of that, more than the core subject itself. So, and that's something that the IE pitches as well, right? There's a tremendous international network that you're gonna be able to build.
I think every MBA program pitches that. I mean, the content that you learn in class is going to change over time. So that stuff, yes, it's valuable. And if you can keep on top of it, it gives you an initial introduction that you can choose to carry on, going deeper and deeper into that topic and stay on top of changes, but you have a good foundation. But a lot of people argue that the real value is the network, right?
So what do you guys think about, the network that IE provided?
Well, I think it's... sorry, just to kind of give my brief response to that, and I can elaborate later. But I think it's hard to say just yet, right? We've only just finished, and it's not like the network, you get all of the value out of it right when you graduate.
No, but you would have a sense, right? I mean, at this point, if you have to reach out to, say, a bunch of people, you already have in your mind map, you already know, okay, I can talk to this person there. you already have a sense of who you can reach out to, what you can leverage.
Well, yes and no. I mean, the network goes beyond just the people you met during the program. Like a lot of the opportunities that I've come across for potential jobs for me, yeah, some of them are from people that were in my class that I actually know personally, but there are other people that went to IE before, and I can be introduced to through different
Fair
channels,
enough. The
right?
alumni
And
network, yeah?
that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also want to build on that, and exactly like Bibake said, maybe it's not as valuable now as it will become in 10, 15 years. Remember, you've got a certain connection with someone now, and I think it's a strong connection, and there's a certain almost unwritten code, where you help out people from your alumni or your fellow alumni.
Yeah.
From the university that you went to. So I will definitely go out of my way to help someone if they are in South Africa or they need help with something that I've experienced if they are from IE, more than I would someone that's not, however weird that might sound, but that's because I want to support a network like that. But, I think both professionally and on a personal level, the network that you build up is great, man. If I go to Italy, France, Germany, Canada, India, you always have someone to,
someone to reach out to, talk to.
Reach out to and drink a beer with, man. And it wouldn't be, I think that just makes a huge difference in life, if you, let's say, make that split between professional and personal. But I think the one question that keeps on coming to my mind is, is somebody worse off, after an MBA? Do we know of anybody that might be, in a worse position after MBA? Because I think, let's take us three as an example. I more or less ticked the boxes that I wanted to. I got a job straight out of MBA, just like you guys, with a firm that I think is going places, and in the bracket that I aimed for in terms of, let's say compensation wise as well. And do we know of anybody? Maybe an interesting question.
Yeah, but that's again, this question would be slightly biased, right? Because we've all come out of this with
exactly
a good opportunity in hand, right?
I think, well, just to kind of answer that, I think because of this whole COVID, which we haven't even touched on yet, is kind of putting a wrinkle in people's job search prospects, at least right now. And so, there might be some people that are kind of frustrated that they're not finding jobs, but I think in the long run, it'll pay off. And one other thing, like a lot of people argue that you can get a similar education with like online courses. But I think what this communicates to prospective employers, that you're willing to invest and move to another country and go all in on something like this, it says a lot, right? It says a lot about your commitment to your professional growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this
the type of person you are
alludes back to that other point you were saying. What if you could just gain information from reading about it or from listening to, say, a video? At the end of the day, it's about being there. And you also, I think, I thought this whole network thing was, B school bullshit when I first heard about it. I thought you're coming here to learn, but actually, I think I've learned a lot more from the people in our class than I expected. Definitely working with a diverse set of people as well, semester on semester. I think it gives you a lot of perspective and a lot of the soft skills that probably we take for granted, put to test, when you work with a particularly difficult teammate.
Well, I think it's important to recognize what the MBA is preparing people for, right? There's a reason they put so much emphasis on, say, participation in class, right? I mean, I've been in a professional setting where someone who's very outspoken outside of meetings and has all these great ideas, you put that person in a room with the CEO and they're not able to actually articulate themselves very well and then put forward their ideas. And so that's a very important skill that you don't necessarily learn in a class in terms of like the curriculum, but that there's other ways to develop that skill, making you present often, which we did a lot of, making you work in groups, right? Participation was a huge part of class, like cases, right? Some classes were very
some
heavily.
classes were a lot of fun. Huh? I mean, good amount of debate.
I mean, I'm someone that participated a lot in class, and a lot of times the stuff I had to say was maybe not the right answer, but I think the ability to just throw up your hand and be like, I think this is the right answer, and sometimes I would put up my hand, not
Especially
knowing,
leading
not,
people in teams. I mean,
yeah, right. And not knowing what I was going to say, I'd sometimes throw up my hand and see if I can come up with a good answer when I'm called on, even though I don't have one in mind. Like that's
yeah.
something that, I mean, it kind of speaks to my personality as an extrovert, right? So it's something that I'm more naturally drawn towards, and I end up saying things that aren't necessarily right or what I would have said had I thought more about it. But that's an important skill in the workplace,
Yeah.
especially as a leader.
No, I agree, and it makes you more comfortable in that setting. Again,
Yeah.
Speaking in front of 45 odd people about a topic that you just heard. Yeah, it's exactly like you said.
Kobus, do you remember the first the case that was I don't know, they were just prepping us, showing us what case studies is going to be like, and it was about some boss and his subordinate didn't agree with him, went off the goal or whatever, and then someone said something, and I raised my hand and I said, yeah, I think he should make an example of that guy, and half the class just turned against me. They're like, no, how can you fire him? And then Kobus was sitting behind me. He raised his hand and said, I agree with Gotham. I think you should fire that guy.
Yeah, sometimes it's just...
I think it lends that, it's that very, there are some people who are extremely diplomatic about it, but it also gives you a good all-rounded view on a topic, right? I mean, I've been proven wrong many times. I've had a very strong opinion about a case, but after listening to a few people talk, I've changed that completely by the end of a class.
Yeah, there's a lot of value in that, right? That's hard to replicate or reproduce in, like, say, even an online context, right?
Yeah. But that's a factor of having good people in a class, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Then it comes down to the school making sure that they have a good selection criteria, right? And
yeah, and IE sometimes drop the ball with that, in my opinion. They could have done a better job of ensuring a better cohort.
Well, I think there's a trade-off there, right, between diversity and people that bring these kind of more zany perspectives, and then kind of the quality of the conversation and quality in particular dimensions, right? So the more diversity you have, the more dimensions in which your people are competent in, but they might not be as competent in the dimensions that you are typically used to, or you think determines the quality of a person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I articulated that well, but like, say for example, someone's very creative and they come up with really interesting ideas. That person in class, they might not be the best at communicating their ideas very well, right? And so you might think, well, this person's not really contributing to the discussion very well, but they bring something else to the table which isn't as obvious.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
Sure. I think just to mention what I thought about when we spoke about the diversity. So and when you said fire that person, because I think those discussions in class, and because of the diversity, it gave you like the way left and the way right perspectives on a lot of topics, and that's good perspective to have, because I think if you grow up in a certain environment with the same people, and you, let's say, in the same company, you tend to have a certain way of thinking. And for me, at least, it was a massive benefit to hear all the different perspectives. I don't have to adopt any of them, but it's at least great to get those perspectives and have them in mind when you talk to someone, and when you try and understand someone. It's good.
Yeah.
Have gone through that. Sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, jumping outside of academics, I mean, I think I can safely speak for Kobus and I when we say that we haven't done jack shit in terms of clubs or extracurricular activities. I know, Bibake, you dabbled with the consulting club and you were quite involved for a long time. How much of that do you think really matters? Like, I know a lot of folks in our intake, especially, who dedicated a lot of time just for a club and being a coordinator, being a president, and they did a phenomenal job. Not to take away from what they've achieved, but how much of that is really, really working towards?
Well, I think it's hard to say, right? Because everyone comes in with a different set of priorities and objectives, and what they want to get out of the program. So I think what IE offers, and I think a lot of other schools offer this as well, is just a broad kind of range of choices, right? of things to do. And so I think the important question is it useful? Because it depends from club to club, and they change from year to year, and it really depends on what you want to make of it. And you can really turn it into whatever you want. I mean, there's some clubs that set up these huge events. They brought in a lot of speakers. They developed a lot of good relationships. It opened a lot of doors for them. Whereas a lot of other people might have spent a lot of time in the club, but they might not have gotten much out of it in terms of, say, job prospects or even relationships. And so you could say that was a bit of a waste of their time. So it's very dependent. I wouldn't just say that clubs are.
But I kind of see what you mean. It's not something you can take away from a B school as well, right? I mean, it's an outlet for people to.
Well, it's very important, right? It allows people to be creative
Yeah.
and try things, right? Experiment with things that without much cost, right? But I think the important thing there is for people to understand what they're trying to get out of the program and prioritize, because I think a lot of times people will spread themselves too thin, and there's a risk of me doing this. I mean, I was involved with the consulting club, but at some point I decided to take a step back because I was finding that I wasn't able to focus on academics as much as I wanted to, and focus on, say, my job search as much as I wanted to, as well as focus on the consulting club as much as I wanted to. So I had to kind of prioritize, right? And I think especially at a school like IE, where not only you have all this stuff, but then you're also in Madrid, you're also in, well located.
There's a lot going on.
Travel throughout Europe, right? There's just so many options.
Yeah.
And I think it's people have like the FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. So they want to do everything. And as a result, they almost spread themselves too thin. And yeah, so you have to sacrifice, right? But that, again, that's an important skill to develop, right? That's going to be relevant in the rest of people's lives, right? You have to make sacrifices. You have to be like, okay, I want to do all this stuff, but I can't do all of it at once. And so I have to focus on these one or two things right now. And then eventually maybe I can add another thing to my plate once I have those things under control. So I think clubs are a perfect example of that, right? They're very tempting to want to do everything. I mean, a lot of people will join every club that they can think of when they first get there, and then school starts picking up, and then they realize that they have responsibilities in the clubs that they're not able to maintain. And then either their school starts to suffer, or they don't actually make anything of the club and the club suffers, or they try and do everything and they don't get sleep, and so it's just, again, right, it's an important skill to develop, and they give you the environment in which to be able to try different things out, and it's up to you as an individual to figure out how to make the most of it.
Mm-hmm. Kobus, would you have I mean, if you could do it over, would you have invested time in a club? Or
no, man, not at all. But
not for you.
but I think it has its place though, because let's say you come to Madrid and you 100% alone, and you don't know anybody in Madrid, you didn't get a reference for the school, or have any type of support in Madrid, then I think it's a great way to start socializing with people and get to know people that have common interests, or common goals at least. So no, I think there's a definite place for clubs, but I agree with Bibake again. You have to think about what you want out of the whole thing, and line everything up from the start so as to reach that goal. But no, clubs are great, man. I think the consulting club helps a lot of guys, especially with those cases that they did. And I was part of the rugby club for a week or two. Didn't participate too much except for MBATs, but it was good, man. I went trained with the guys like 2 or 3 times. Went out for a few beers afterwards, and I'm still friends with some of those guys. So no, I think clubs are good, man. Very good. It's a great thing.
So, Kobus, actually, you already brought this up, but I want to let's talk about career, right? All of us have managed to land our next opportunity. We all know what we're going to be doing. Hopefully, as long as COVID doesn't delay too many things. But I'll start off by asking Kobus. Kobus, would you hire someone from IE? And if you would, what do you look for?
Yeah, I don't think I would specifically hire someone from IE. I would hire a good person from IE. A person that I think is solid from IE. I think it's a interesting question. I think my decision will be 100% based on that person sitting in front of me. I think IE would play a role to a certain degree, but I wouldn't I wouldn't pick someone from any university above someone else if they're not, solid in the interview and they don't impress me and they don't have the right, characteristics or principles that I'm looking for. So, but it's an interesting question. We spoke about the let's say the application and what do you call it, the fact that there's an IE mat and not a GMAT, and that does make a big difference. But yeah, but I think Bibake again hit the nail on the head when he said that there's a trade-off. I think a lot of people that we got a lot of good value out of and that we're good friends with now wouldn't have gotten into Oxford or Harvard or Stanford just because they're not the type of people that will focus on the GMAT and sort it out. But they definitely did contribute not only in classroom but outside of it as well, and they are beneficial for your network. So yeah, I think that's I think my angle on answering that question.
What do you think? And you, Vivek, what do you think? What would you look for if you were to hire someone, say from IE?
I mean, I would echo what Kobus is saying. I mean, I think there might be somewhat of a bias towards IE, and it's not because they're from IE. I think I would just I would have a lot more touch points to learn more about that person,
to gauge the person. Yeah.
I mean, odds are that if someone were looking for a job and they got in touch with me, that they would have done it through someone that I know, and so someone's kind of maybe vetted that person for me, or they can vouch for them. So there's things like that might set an IE person apart slightly. But again, it comes down to that individual, right? If I think that individual would be the right person for whatever job that they're applying to, then I would hire them, right? But I mean, having been to IE, I'm going to have a slight bias, but I think it's rooted in it needs to be rooted in some sort of something real, right? And
Yeah.
competence is important, and then also relationships and other people vouching for that person is also important. So yeah.
So I mean, we all managed to land jobs while we were at IE, and I think we all took fairly different approaches to the entire thing, right? I mean, I think of all three of us, Bibake's might be, for the lack of a better word, more traditional in sense. You had people who came in specifically for recruitment, and then you got talking, right? So I mean, if you were to I don't know, advise someone who's just finishing up the MBA right now to, like, in terms of the job hunt itself, how would you go about it, given this whole coronavirus thing as well? What do you think would be the best approach as of now?
Well, it's hard to say during this whole virus. I mean, there are some industries that are doing well,
Mhm.
and so I think there are a lot of opportunities out there. But speaking more generally, what helped me was having a plan coming in. And I think some people are reluctant to have too much of a plan coming in because they don't want to limit themselves. But there's a whole paradox of choice, right? When you have too many options that you could, potentially do, you end up having a hard time picking between them. And then you if you keep yourself way too open, which I think a lot of people do, and I was kind of in this boat as well for a little bit. You have a hard time actually making much progress. So for example, for me, I was interested in consulting coming in, so that was good. I was already somewhat focused, but I was open to going anywhere initially, right? Even though Canada was my main target, I was open to staying in Europe. I was open to going to any country, and I thought that would actually make me a better candidate and make it easier. But it actually made it a lot harder, because what I found was you need to network with specific offices and with specific people, and you can't just network with a company globally, right? So when I actually focused in on Toronto, I was able to reach out to specific offices there, talk to recruiters, talk to people I know there, get referrals to those offices, and then get interviews, and then get a job. And so I think I would advise people to narrow down, at least temporarily, right? Because you need to get opportunities, you need to be focused. And
Yeah,
so even if you're someone
temporarily is what maybe I'd stress on. It's I would still say, you gotta be open to anything that might just pop up, right?
Yeah. So for me, it was important for me to at least have something in the bag. I didn't want to be stressed when graduation time was coming around and not having found anything yet. And so the reason I said temporarily is that, like, if you're interested in, say, potentially going to consulting or going into a specific tech company or investment banking or whatever, like, it's really hard to job search all of those at once. And so you're better off, okay, let me focus on consulting in this specific region, in these few firms, and let me get some interviews, let me get some prospects, and then maybe I can, once I get a job, or maybe once I realize that that's not for me, I can kind of cross it off and then move on to the next thing. I think that's a better approach, and it goes back to me saying that you can't do everything at once, right? You can do everything, you just can't do it all at once, and so you need to prioritize.
I mean, you can do a couple of things at once, right? You don't have to. You can probably like look at like two industries at once.
But you just got to be careful in recognizing, that there's a trade-off between the amount of things you manage and how well you do them, right? And so if you want to do things extremely well, you have to limit yourself to just a couple things that your attention's on. I mean, that's a recipe that I think has worked for me. And again, it comes from my sports background, right? Football was the main thing I was doing for 12 years of my life, or at least for the better half of that. And because of that, I was able to make it quite far in it, right? A lot of other people had other things that they were focused on, and their focus was divided. And it might have been because they weren't as interested in football, which that's fine. But I think if you want to make it far in something and you want to actually succeed and be among kind of the top performers, let's say, or as high of a performer, or reach your potential, let's say that, then you need to at some point sacrifice other things to be able to focus on one or a select few things.
Yeah. So Kobus, what did you? Yours is also slightly different, right? You reached out through the professor, and then you were able to convert. I remember that whole like 6 month period where you had a 6 or 3 month period where you had to go through like a mini project thing.
Yeah. So I think I agree with what Bibake said again. It's almost like you can have a bit of a general approach, but when you see something that interests you and that aligns itself with your set of skills and your background and your experience, you have to go after it hard, and you have to put in a lot of effort to get it. Because let's say in my mind there's two different approaches. The one is sending out your CV to as many, or submitting as many applications as possible, or selecting a handful of them and really focusing on them and doing proper cover letters, specifying or tailoring your CV for that specific job, phoning the guys, maybe visiting them, etc. That's like the different approach, or the other approach. And I tend to lean towards that one more, and that's my style. What I did was I had specific goals that I wanted to reach, and when I saw an opportunity that presented itself to me, or that I almost went and dug for, and it appeared, I said, listen, I'm going to focus on this, because if I get this done, it's sorted. And that's exactly how I went about. So, but like, just as an example, I sat in class, the professor was talking, he spoke about mining, which is my background. And I, right there in class, put together an email and sent it to him. And that was like the first step. And I did that a few times. And let's say, several times it didn't pay off and there was no reply, but this one stuck, and I saw this is where the opportunity is. This one could, like I said, tick all the boxes that I wanted to tick, and I went full blast for it. So how my thing played out is I did work for him the last 3 months of the MBA. You obviously assisted me with that project way at the end, but I put together a go-to-market strategy for them, for the South African market, and that was obviously I got paid for it, which is great. But that was obviously his way of checking out, my style, if it'll fit in with exactly what he wants, which it luckily, well, not luckily did, which it did. And yeah, now we have a great relationship. I think there's a good opportunity in the company, although it's not percent. I think there's great opportunity with the company. It's a solid company, and it worked out for me. So my suggestion, or my advice would be to, again, shoot out or be relatively general in your approach at the beginning. But when you see something that that you like, go for it full blast. Don't deal with it the same as what you would with any normal application, because that's what makes the difference.
Just to dovetail on something Kobus said there, about having some goals in mind. So I think it's important to have something that you're aiming at, and a lot of people have a hard time really kind of having a fully fleshed out image of where they want to go in life, and that's fine. But as long as you have a vague idea that you refine over time, I think that's really important. Have an aim, because there's so many opportunities. There's so many different things you could do. If you don't have a set of criteria or something that you're targeting, that you're going towards, it's really hard to differentiate between different opportunities and what makes sense for you and what doesn't. And so I think that's the starting point, is have a sense of what you want from life in general in the long term, and then kind of work your way backwards from there. And then I think you'll have a much easier time distinguishing between opportunities that make sense for you and opportunities that don't. And because a lot of people don't necessarily have that, not to say my vision is fully fleshed out, but I think it's refined enough where it is useful in helping me decide how to act. But I think when people don't have that, they just kind of rely on looking around and seeing what other people are doing, what seems to be the thing to do. And they're just like, oh, I'll just do that too, because people seem to be vouching for that,
easy way out.
That option, right? Oh, consulting seems popular, right? It must be good. It must be worth doing. But
that's what I did for the first term of MBA, but I quickly realized it was not for me, and I moved on.
It's normal, right? The thing is, the problem with that approach is there are a lot of things worth doing, right? So it's not just to look for things that are worth doing isn't a very it's not a very good criteria, right? It doesn't help. It's just like you still have way too many options, so it's not a good filter. And everyone needs to develop their own personal filter to decide, okay, what's worth doing for me given what I want in life, right? And once you've kind of developed that, then that's when you kind of step out and start looking at different options. And so that requires a certain amount of introspection, and really kind of digging deep and looking at who matters in your life, what they want, what you want, how you kind of set yourself up so that you're successful now and also in the future. And it's not easy to do, but it's definitely a worthwhile exercise.
Perfect, man. Thank you. Kobus, I understand that you have to wrap things up and
yes,
take care of some wildlife outside your door.
Lions knocking on my door. I have to chase them away and put two criminals to bed. And yeah.
But thanks for doing this, man. It's been good fun talking to you, and hopefully we can do something like this again. We'll talk about something else.
Yeah. No, very cool. Thank you for the opportunity, Gotham, and nice to talk to you and Bibake again. Two absolute champions. Always a pleasure. Yeah, thanks a lot for that, guys. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man. Have a good night, and tell the family I said hello.
Will do. Thanks.
Have a good time, man.
Yes, boys.
Bibake, what's your schedule?
I can stay on for a few more here.
All right, perfect, cool. Because I think we can probably talk about like specific to us, in terms of actually, something I want to talk about in I don't want to bring it up because I don't want to take more time from Kobus, but in terms of how you could probably flesh out your profile. Like we've talked about this, right? Building out a portfolio in terms of like when you're going hunting for a job. I think that's something that perhaps helped me land my job, was that I was extremely active. I had a lot of things going on. I was constantly engaging with people on LinkedIn, especially. And I think that the reason that helped is because my application to Amazon was pretty straightforward. It was just a LinkedIn apply. But I think that's the first touch point, right? And when they go and then they see you being extremely active, I think it automatically sets a good impression. I would definitely say, it's not something. It's kind of become a bit of a marketplace now. It's not a great social media platform, but I would definitely say it's a good tool to leverage when you're hunting for a job.
LinkedIn, you're talking about? Yeah, so you're asking how important is it to be active on there?
Would you have, yeah.
Again, I think it depends case by case, and I think you and I have different approaches there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not nearly as active on LinkedIn, and I think there's some value in being, and I probably could afford to be more active on there and share my thoughts on things. but for me, I guess throughout the program, and I had already landed a job back in November, and so I was focused on trying to learn as much as I could throughout the second program there, the Masters in Big Data, because it was a field that was completely new to me. So you have an experience, or you have prior experience in kind of the tech space,
Yeah, I
and
did.
so for you, you know, I'd imagine some of it was review, but also you're already somewhat confident in your ability to learn these topics on your own if need be. Um, Whereas for me, I was trying to learn as much as I possibly could in as short amount of time as I possibly could, and go beyond what we're just learning in class. And so that took priority for me.
Uh-huh.
And so I didn't, as a result, I wasn't as active on LinkedIn, in kind of sharing my thoughts. Another thing for me, I'm never really sure what to share on there. I mean, I've thought about some ideas for articles that I could write, but I always feel as though I have a lot more left to learn. And so, yes, I could share my thoughts on a topic, but my thoughts still are they need to be refined more, and I still need to learn more on that topic. And there's already so much. People are being inundated with information. If I were to share an article about, you know, machine learning in a business context, or machine learning for business leaders, or whatever, blah blah blah, which I think I could write a reasonable article about that. There's already so many out there that
Yeah.
I wouldn't really be bringing much to the table. All I'd really be doing is kind of, it's just a way to signal to my network on LinkedIn that, hey, I'm, you know, I know about this topic, and you know, keep me top of mind, and just, it's just a way to kind of bring my name up on
On the
LinkedIn,
newsfeed. But I think
which,
I think my approach to that was to actually do like mini projects, you know. I had like a lot of like small things going on constantly.
yeah,
And I find that, yeah, okay, it might not be of like, you know, world class
yeah,
quality, but it's an evolution, right? Eventually, the next time I post, it's going to be much better than the
yeah.
previous project that I posted, and
So
it's sort of a
I could afford to learn from that approach. Um, I wouldn't call myself a perfectionist, but I'm quite critical of my work, and so when I know something could be better, I always want to try and make it better, and sometimes that might prevent me from sharing work that's not as high quality as I know it could be.
yeah.
Um, I mean, projects in class kind of force you to have to come up with something. It's not the perfect product, but you have to develop it by a certain deadline. And I guess I could be better at coming up with a project and setting an artificial deadline for myself, and working towards it. Um, and I've been able to do that for a lot of things. I mean, the MBA application process, and preparing for the GMAT. I guess those weren't artificial deadlines; they were actually externally imposed. But other kind of objectives that I have in life, I'm able to establish those. But when it comes to projects and sharing them on LinkedIn or GitHub, I could definitely afford to kind of take more of an approach similar to yours on that. Hey, do you mind if I take a quick pit stop?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be back in.
Wait, hold on. I'll pause our recording. Yes, we're back. Yeah, perfect, man. And so both of us did the masters in big data. And if you had to pick one, I mean, I think this answer is pretty obvious, but well, let me rephrase that question then. You know, like, do you think your MBA is a lot better now because of this added masters, or do you think the MBA stands on its own and the big data stands on its own?
Um, well, I think the two definitely complement each other, at least for me. I mean, my undergrad was in communications. Now with a master's in business, that kind of gives me the high level business view. In the second program, gives me kind of more of a technical view on things, and I think that makes me relatively well rounded, and that's something I appreciate.
Uh-huh.
Um, so so for me, they were very complementary. I definitely learned a lot more in the second program, in the MBD. And again, that was a product of me not having been very familiar with the topic from the get-go. The MBA, I mean, I had done a minor in business, and
So
so some of
yeah,
the topics I had
yeah,
already.
but you probably did a lot more in depth with IE.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
find
no,
that the MBD totally. I think the MBD gave me a lot more. I took away a lot more from the MBD, the Masters in Big Data, versus the MBA. And I
yeah.
think, okay, that's again, this is personal bias. I think I enjoy working with data a lot more than financial data per se.
Well, I think the difference is that I came out with very tangible skills, right? I learned programming
Python, and
languages, how to use certain libraries and how to manipulate data, how to come up with insights. And it's an engineering degree in some sense, right? You're
and
actually
it's
creating
a lot
things.
more interesting to build a machine learning model than to write a paper on strategy. Let's face it.
Yeah. But I do think that there's a lot of value in what you learn in the MBA. It's not as tangible,
Yeah.
but I think it's extremely valuable. But I think what the MBA offered that the MBA doesn't necessarily offer as much is the whole network side and exposure to the job market in a much more active way. Um, like the job opportunity that I ended up going with was a product of the MBA, right? I hadn't even started the MBD yet,
Yeah.
and so I think it's I wouldn't really discount that. But yeah, in terms of pure learning and in terms of growing my skill set, the MBD was definitely much more rewarding in that sense, and that's again partially a result of my previous experience.
Yeah. Do you think it transitioned well to online classes? Because I struggled once we hit this whole COVID coronavirus, right?
Hmm.
I mean, I get it. Like, it's more of a technical degree. It shouldn't really be as difficult to transition online. But just the way it was
Well,
structured in terms of the participation and all of that. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I thought the school did a relatively good job. I mean, they offer a lot of
for
online
yeah,
courses anyway, so the transition was fairly seamless.
yeah,
But I think you and I are similar in that we're quite extroverted and we enjoy interacting with other people. And so being in class, I think, adds a whole new set of dimensions, which I enjoy. With that said, I still feel as though I learned all the stuff that I would have learned in class.
hmm
Um, I mean, I had two monitors set up at home so I could follow along in a class, and on one screen, on the other screen, I'd have my, I'd code along with the teacher, and so that was valuable. Whereas in class, I typically had my computer shut.
yeah. But
Um,
you've always you've been used to working at home, right? I mean, even doing the MBA, you used to come back and get shit done at home. If I'm not
yeah, I
wrong.
mean, that was a priority for me, was to set up a good working environment at home
Yeah, see, no,
to get
that's
stuff
where I
done.
think I dropped the ball because for me, all my work was done in the university. Like I would pick a meeting room, even if I'm sitting by myself, but
Yeah,
I'd rather get it all done because for me, coming back home meant I'm done. I'm not gonna work anymore. But then having to
yeah,
transition from that environment to make it a environment conducive to work, that's I think that's where I struggle, and I think that's what I'm gonna change also now. Next place that I move, I'm gonna make sure I have my workstation set up.
yeah.
I have to jump
Well,
into that.
I think there's a trade-off there, right? And a lot of people are struggling with this now, with this whole working remotely kind of paradigm that's happening with COVID. Is there's benefits to it, and there are some costs, right? So the benefit is that you can work from home, so that offers you a lot of
You
you
save a
know
lot of money also in
you
transport and
say you
shit.
save money. You don't have to go somewhere, right? So you don't it reduces
Time,
the
yeah.
barrier to you actually getting stuff done. But then the trade-off is that you are always at work, right?
Yeah, you're
So you need to find a
encroaching on
way
your
to
personal space, right? It's sort of, you no longer have a work-life separation.
yeah. Yeah, and kind of that's the brain um, attributes certain emotions, certain mindsets to certain spaces, right? And so for you to finish all your work at school and then go home, it's your opportunity to relax, and your brain kind of knows it as a place for you to relax
Yeah.
and do something else. And so I always felt that I had work going on. I was doing something. I'd wake up in the morning, kind of do my morning routine, and then I would sit down and get to work, whether it was a weekend or a weekday or whatever, right? And so
Yeah.
that was like a full-time thing for me, and I didn't mind it, right? Because the way I was able to mitigate the potential anxiety that comes along with that
Uh-huh.
um, was that I always just tried to stay on top of things and not have schoolwork be a source of anxiety, because I wasn't falling behind, or I wasn't neglecting things. Um, but that's not necessarily easy to do, and I didn't necessarily do it successfully all the time. So that's something you got to be careful with.
That's the next big thing to adapt to. I mean, we're going to have to.
Hmm.
And I think the sooner, at least for me, the sooner I adapt to that, the better I'll do.
Yeah,
But I honestly believe, like in my opinion, if to be successful professionally, I mean, there's only so much you can do unless you're like completely, your role is completely technical. You're a you're a software developer, I don't think you definitely need some aspect of human interaction to, truly excel.
Yeah, I mean, technology is coming along where we're able to replace a lot of things that you can do in person, and so I mean, with video calls, you can still socialize quite a bit.
Yeah,
But
but
yeah,
can you replace small talk? I mean, I don't know, man. It's a rapport building, right? I mean, you
well,
wanna build those micro relationships across your place of work as well.
the question is, what purpose does small talk serve, and can that same purpose be served in another way, right?
It can definitely be served with in an online environment as well. It's just a lot harder. But imagine like being in an office. I think the purpose it serves is you're pretty much establishing what your comfort zone is, right? At that point. And
Mhm.
if someone is in crisis, not in crisis, maybe too strong a word, but if someone needs to look to someone to address an issue or a problem or need someone to go to, if you have established yourself as you're comfortable in this environment, you're automatically that person who is saying yes to that opportunities of dealing with something that might come up. I'm not talking about office politics per se. I'm talking more work related.
Well, I think there are an increasing number of touch points, like digital touch points, right? So whether it's on a Zoom call, whether it's an email, whether it's a text, whether it's through some sort of social media platform, and I think companies are innovating in this space where they're using different software and different solutions, whether it be Slack. So I think, our last term was all online, and so we had groups for every term, and so my last group was we never actually worked together in a room.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously I knew the people from before because we were in class with them, but I hadn't worked with them
You're talking
in a
about
group.
Alejandro and those guys, right? Patricia and all.
Yeah. So my last group, and I think we were able to work quite effectively. um, Now, I would have probably built closer relationships with more of the people had we been in the same room together more often. But I think we were able to still produce quite good work and maintain pretty good relationships, and the touch points were pretty good in terms of people keeping each other in the loop and us doing Zoom calls quite often. And I mean, some days if Alejandro and I were working on something, we would have a Zoom call going for a couple hours where I would have my second screen I'm working on there, and I'd have Zoom kind of minimized.
You guys would
But
just stay on Zoom call for like hours. Wow.
yeah, so every like, because we'd be working on something similar, but we were kind of in our own zone. I'd have music playing,
Mhm.
but then if a question would come up, I would just speak out loud, right, as though we were in the same room.
Ah,
um,
yeah.
and then we would. So there's, I think, I understand that people feel as though a lot of what you're able to do in person is kind of beyond the reach of these kind of digital technologies, I suppose you can call them. But I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think it's important to understand what purpose does the the kind of in-person touch point serve,
Mhm.
and can that same purpose be served in another way? And I think in a lot of cases the answer is yes, right? Like you mentioned small talk, but small talk serves a purpose, right? And that same purpose can be served in another way, and it might not take the form of small talk, just in passing or kind of a just body language or things like that. But that same purpose can be served in other ways, and it's being served in other ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice, man. I think that pretty much covers everything that I want to talk about. But yeah,
Yeah,
this has been great. It's been
yeah.
good to get
No,
some
it's
perspective.
yeah, it's always nice to. I mean, the stuff that we've talked about in passing and kind of here or there, but it's nice to have a platform to actually sit down and think through things and
Yeah.
to get your thoughts out there. And yeah, I mean, I try to think through my answers on the spot, and so not everything's as well thought out as it may have been had I spent some time beforehand.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I think there's value in that, right? Just seeing what comes to mind and really.
Yeah, and I think
Um,
there's value in like getting different perspectives as well, right? I mean, I definitely want to like get. I mean, the thing is, between the three of us, while we disagree on a few things, more or less, we have a similar sense of where. I mean, in general, our approach to most of the things, right? But
mhm.
it would be very interesting to see an alternate perspective as well. Someone like who, like Kobus mentioned, who spent a lot of time drinking or socializing more than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think there's definitely value in that. Are you
But yeah,
planning to
man,
have
thanks.
more of these?
Yeah, for sure. We should definitely try to get some. But yeah, let's wrap this up and then we'll take it offline. But thank you so much for taking time to do this, and it's been good fun talking about a few of
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah. Of course. No problem. Thanks for having me on.
All right, man. Talk to you soon.